we're going to leave this place better than how we found it, right? So that idea of people planting trees, doing something that like benefits others, does something more, so that because of them more beauty in the world was created. That's also ihsan.
Rahman.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een, amma ba'd. فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي آمين يا رب العالمين. I'm going to start today by taking us back a little bit to the first, the core section of the surah, where Allah was terrifying those who deny this message by describing Judgment Day and then the punishments of hellfire. The reason I'm going to do that is because I didn't discuss the structure of that passage or how the contents of that passage were organized. So I'm going to give you a quick picture of that and then come to where we are now, where Allah has done describing two gardens for us, and we're going to move on to the other two gardens. So what we read already was Allah opened a challenge and said they can't escape. In tanfudu min aqtar as-samawati wal ard, yeah? And then they're trying to run from explosions, يُرْسَلُ عَلَيْكُمَا شُوَاظٌ مِّن نَارٍ, and they can't seem to get away. They find themselves helpless. Then the sky is torn open and it turns blood red or orange red like oil, right? And oil, of course, is a reference to something that's being cooked or roasting or frying or something. And then they won't be asked about their sins. لَا يُسْأَلُ عَنْ ذَنْبِهِ إِنسٌ وَلَا جَانٌ, right? That was the next thing. Then criminals are known by their faces. فَيُؤْخَذُ بِالنَّوَاصِي وَالْأَقْدَامِ. They're stretched between the head and the feet. Remember that? They're grabbed, right? And then they are running between scorching fire and water, like the يَطُوفُونَ بَيْنَهَا وَبَيْنَ حَمِيمٍ آنٍ. And then Allah finally said, وَلِمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ, and for whoever was afraid of standing before their master. So these were the contents of that passage. But now let's look at that passage again. So the first thing was you can't escape. And the last thing was you're going to stand before your master. So you can see a logical connection between those two things. The second thing was you're running from explosions helpless. You're running this way or that way and you keep coming back. And towards the end, they're in hellfire running between two locations. يَطُوفُونَ بَيْنَهَا وَبَيْنَ حَمِيمٍ آنٍ. The sky is torn open and it's like a slaughtered animal. Remember? And it's like oil dripping. And on the other hand, they are being held, grabbed like an animal, stretched. And then they won't be asked about their sins. And then there's the explanation, why won't they be asked about their sins? Because they'll be recognized by their faces. So in doing so, there's subtle elements in the passage that sort of symmetrically connect with each other. And that forms the middle of the section. Now, here we are. هَلْ جَزَاءُ الْإِحْسَانِ إِلَّا الْإِحْسَانِ. Allah asks this remarkable question. The translation of this is pretty difficult. One easy translation can be, is the compensation for excellence anything but excellence? Right? Or easier translation is the pay for the best anything but the best? Al-Ihsan could be the best. Al-Ihsan could also be beautiful. Is the compensation for beauty anything short of beauty, right? So these are different implications of the word al-ihsan. The first thing I think we should address here is a famous hadith associated with this ayah. So let's read through that. Al-muradu ma jaza'u tawheed illa al-jannah. The intent here could be, what could be the reward of believing in one God except heaven? وَأُيِّدَ بِظَوَاهِرْ كَثِيرٍ مِنَ الْآثَارِ. And this idea has become reinforced by many narrations. أخرج الحكيم الترمذي في نوادر الأصول والبغوي في تفسيره والديلمي في مسند الفروس وابن النجار في تاريخه عن أنس. So multiple sources reporting from Anas رضي الله عنه. قرأ رسول الله صلى الله عليه تعالى وسلم هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم recited this ayah. Should the reward of beauty be anything but beauty? He recited this ayah. And then he said, وَهَلْ تَدْرُونَ مَا قَالَ رَبُّكُمْ. Do you realize what your master has said? Do you people realize what he has said? And they responded, the companions responded, Allahu wa rasuluhu a'lam, Allah and His Messenger know better, which is their way of saying, please tell us, right? قال يقول هل جزاء من أنعمت عليه بالتوحيد إلا الجنة. He's saying, should the compensation for whoever I have blessed with believing in one God be anything but Jannah? Right? So this is a famous narration associated with it. Now this has philosophical implications, because there's a famous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ about Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. Right? So Islam is the kind of the baseline, minimal, belief, and then Iman is the strength of faith, and Ihsan is you're at the level where you feel like Allah is always watching you, or almost like you can see Allah Himself. Right? So it's a highest level of acknowledgement. What's remarkable about this particular place in the Quran is that we started the passage with whoever was afraid of standing in front of their Rabb. Right? That's where we started. That seems like the minimal. Like that seems like Islam. But by the end of it, that same thing is being described as what? Ihsan. Right? So it's as if Allah is opening the doors wider for who He's willing to accept as people of Ihsan in this surah. Like you would think normally the people of Ihsan are very, very high standard, and I'm probably, if I could just get just graduating marks, I could just get Islam, I'll be good. But here Allah essentially, out of His rahmah, takes the people of Islam and is willing to consider them people of Ihsan. So that makes us revisit the meanings of the word al-Ihsan. Ihsan actually in the Arabic language has to do with husn, which is beauty. In its essence, it has to do with two things, goodness and beauty. So husn, one of its meanings is jamal, it's just literally beauty. And the other thing with the word ihsan in this pattern actually means to do the best you can. Like for example, Allah says, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ ihsana. So with parents, do the best you can. Right? So, and the thing with that is that I have my parents, you have your parents, somebody else has their parents, and no parents are the same. And no family is the same, and no situation is the same. So you have to do the best you can in a given situation. And Allah Himself acknowledges the diversity of different situations. So for example, in Surah Yasin, He says, وَآيَةٌ لَهُمْ أَنَّا حَمَلْنَا ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ فِي الْفُلْكِ الْمَشْحُونِ. It says it's a divine sign that we put their children onto ships. Because in ancient times, you're living somewhere and the living conditions are pretty tough. Your kids don't have a future. Your son doesn't have a future in this place, right? So what did people do with their son? They said, you need to get on a ship. You need to go find new land. You need to go explore. We're too old to do that, but you have your life ahead of you. And so they put their son on a ship and he's gone, right? And when he's gone, can he massage his mother's feet? Can he serve his father get the water from the well? Can he do any of that? No. But this circumstance of the family is such, the best they can do is send him off. And Allah even acknowledges that reality. And by the way, that's the reason why human civilization came to be the way it is. If everybody stayed with their parents, then there would be no seafaring explorers, and there would be no new civilizations, and well, essentially nothing would happen. So what happens is, in some cases, I'm going to stay with my parents and serve them and do the best I can is ihsan. And in other cases, my parents want me to go out there, and the best thing I can do is fulfill their wish and make the family proud or further the needs of the larger tribe. And my mother knows if I stay with her, I won't be able to provide for my kids and all of that. So she wants me to go out there. Even that is ihsan to the mom. But the point I'm making here is ihsan the same thing in every situation? It's not. It's not the same thing in every situation, right? So sometimes, for example, I met a student from Kazakhstan who got accepted into a full scholarship PhD program at a university in the United States, right? And very guilty that they're leaving their mom behind. And the mom is saying, go. This opportunity doesn't come easily, and you finally have this opportunity, and you'll be, you can change maybe even the future of this family and help so many people, and even help the country when you come back. So go. No, but I just want to stay with my mom. I would not think that qualifies as ihsan, because this is more your attachment to your mom and your self-defined guilt than actually what your mom even wants, right? So there is a fluidity in these meanings. So now with that in mind, coming back to the ayah, what this could also mean is people who did their very best Now, somebody doing their very best in a certain situation is not the same as somebody else, right? They're two very different situations. Like imagine some guy who was in a gang, like criminal life, all of that stuff, and he decides to become a Muslim, right? He takes Shahada. Getting away from that old company, is that easy for him? No, it can actually even be deadly, just getting away from that company. You understand? And then from there, forget attending halaqat and studying Arabic and memorizing the Quran and learning tajweed and doing halaqat and all that. The fact that he's not going to the bar and the fact that he's not going to, hang out with the boys at 2 a.m. and he's just getting away from that, and in a corner he's just praying quickly before anybody finds out. You know what that is for him? I would qualify that as ihsan in his situation. This is the best he can do right now, right? So there is a diversity in that, and perhaps Allah is actually acknowledging that diversity. If you put this in the context of the Prophet's life, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right now you read this and you're like, believe in God? That's ihsan? That's a pretty low bar. That's it? That's all it takes? Yeah? Well, it wasn't that convenient, was it? Because if somebody decided to say that I believe in one God, they got treated not that different from how Ibrahim alayhi salam was treated when he decided to declare that he believes in one God. You can get in trouble with your entire family. You can get ostracized. You can get beat up. You can even get killed, right? Your whole life gets turned upside down for one reason. You believe in one God. The same thing with like Ashabul Kahf, right? Allah is not describing them as these saints that were worshiping all night and they were studying the scriptures and all. None of that. They just decided, look, this multiple God thing makes no sense. That's all they said. And that was enough to get them in a lot of trouble. But they held on to that. You know what that was? That was their ihsan. That was their ihsan. So there's a really beautiful expansion of the acceptance of what Allah is going to consider as al-ihsan. But this is, again, there's an important disclaimer and a warning that has to be given when I say these things. Because the idea that I'm doing the best I can has also become a new kind of crutch, a new kind of fake paralysis. I'm doing the best I can. I'm trying really hard. I'm working through it. I'm in the process. Like these words have become now, I'm telling myself a lie that I'm doing the best I can. Well, I'm really not doing anything, but this is a way of patting myself back to sleep. Like I'm not really willing to face reality, so I hide behind the words. I'm doing the best I can. Am I really though? Am I really, or who am I really telling that to? Am I telling that to somebody else so they don't look at me with judgmental eyes? Or am I really honestly able to say that with myself, with all the filters aside, all the fake defense mechanisms aside? Can I actually look at myself and say, I'm actually doing the best that I can? Right? That's a really difficult question to answer sometimes when people live the fake image so much and they're always on the defensive so much that they can't even see themselves for what they're doing anymore. But Allah does not let us hide behind excuses. He says, بَلِ الْإِنسَانُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرًا وَلَوْ أَلْقَى مَعَاذِيرًا. Allah is in full view of, every human being is in full view of themselves, even though they throw out excuses. So our excuses will not help us. So let's dig a little further into the meanings of the word al-ihsan. It's one of the most beautiful ayat in the Quran, by the way. So ihsan means to excel or to do something beautifully. So easy application would be, so if you're writing, you're writing your homework assignment at school, and you're writing, many people now, because they don't focus on handwriting anymore. So I've seen even 18-year-olds with handwriting that looks like they're ready to be a serial killer. Like was that English? Is that human? Who wrote this? But if you write beautifully and you write within the lines and your khat is nice, that you're actually exhibiting ihsan, right? Art projects, school projects, some people's science project looks like depression. Some people actually put a lot of work into, there's ihsan, some people, you guys know some people have like, everybody starts with good intentions at the beginning of the school year. They've got like multiple color pens, and they've got like these little sticker things on their notebook and sections and everything. And then 3 weeks later, there's doodles of mountains and snakes. I don't know what you're drawing in that, but there's no notes in there. Like there's no ihsan in it, right? So the idea is to do something, but to do it well and to do it beautifully. Ihsan also means to do good towards somebody else. It could also mean to do good towards yourself. You know, in ahsantum ahsantum li anfusikum, like Allah says. If you're going to do well, do good. You're doing good to yourself. It's as if Allah says, if I help somebody else, then I've actually done something for my own self. It's similar to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, ad-dallu ala al-khayri kafa'ilihi. The one pointing to something good is like the one doing it themselves, right? So that's the second meaning. And then of course there's creating beauty. Ahsana suwarakum, like in Surah Al-Taghabun. Like, you're not just doing something good because of what you did. Goodness has been created. Beauty has been created. Something, like they say, make the world a better place. So you've done something that's made the world a better place. Or you've often heard, we're going to leave this place better than how we found it, right? So that idea of people planting trees, doing something that like benefits others, does something more, so that because of them, more beauty in the world was created. That's also ihsan. And of course, there's the spiritual implications of the word ihsan. And the spiritual implications is, I lived a life so conscious of Allah, which is the highest standard, right? That almost I could see Him, right? Now with that, all of these in mind, now let's read, what is the compensation of ihsan except ihsan? So what that means is, if I did my very best, this is the ayah that, it's maddening how beautiful it is. Allah says, وَأَحْسِن كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ. This is advice recorded in the Quran. Do ihsan the way Allah did ihsan towards you. Like, do your best, do beautifully, bearing in mind how beautifully Allah has dealt with you. How many favors Allah has done with you. But now there's the flip of that in this ayah. What's that? I'm going to do my best, not just because of what Allah has done for me, but now because I tried to do my best, Allah says, now I will show you what my best looks like. Right? You did your best. That's the human best. But what's beyond human imagination is what is Allah's best. What is beauty from Allah? That's beyond imagination, right? هَلْ جَزَاءُ الْإِحْسَانِ إِلَّا الْإِحْسَانِ. So you tried to create beauty in this world. You tried to do good things. You tried to do good towards someone else. Now let me show you when I do good towards you, what that looks like. Imam Fakhruddin al-Razi, actually commenting on this ayah, believed that because of this ayah, Allah is offering here something. Okay. Allah is offering us something in this ayah that is beyond the words of Jannah in this surah. Like all the stuff that He's offering in this surah, there's something even more than that, and that's this ihsan from Allah. Like هَلْ جَزَاءُ الْإِحْسَانِ إِلَّا الْإِحْسَانِ. It also makes sense because someone who only worshipped Allah to please Allah, right? They didn't worship Allah for the garden. They didn't worship Allah for the fruits. They didn't worship Allah for the spouse. That wasn't in front of them, right? They just wanted to make Allah happy. That's it. Or they just wanted to be able to hear Allah say, you did well. That's it. They needed that validation from Allah. That was their motivation. Well, perhaps all of this stuff that's being described, that's just kind of the entrance level, the introductory rewards. But there's something much greater coming for them, And if we go by that spiritual meaning that's found in the hadith, that you worship Allah as though you can see Him, then perhaps the reward of that is that you actually do what? You do see Him. You do meet with Him, right? And that's what happens in Surah Al-Insan. That's what happens in Surah Yasin. In Surah Yasin, He says, Salamun qawlan min Rabbir Rahim. Allah is saying salam. Allah Himself says salam. In Surah Al-Qiyamah, وُجُوهٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ نَاظِرَةٌ نَاظِرَةٌ إِلَى رَبِّهَا نَاظِرَةٌ. Right? So there are people people's faces are lit because they're staring at their Rabb. They're staring at their Rabb. And then, like Surah Al-Insan goes even further, like Allah is giving you drink. Allah is giving you drink. And as He's giving you drink, He's saying, this is your reward and your efforts were appreciated. إِنَّ هَذَا كَانَ لَكُمْ جَزَاءً وَكَانَ سَعْيُكُمْ مَشْكُورًا. Like it's enough that you're getting a drink in Jannah, because the drinks are mentioned here, but then there's a level of ihsan upgrade where Allah is Himself giving it to you. Not only is He giving it to you, He's telling you, I'm proud of what you did, your efforts were recognized. Right? So it's just this next level of ihsan from Allah. This beauty, how much more beautiful does life get when you get acknowledged? Like human beings, one of the things we need in life is acknowledgement since we're children. What do babies need all the time? Abba, baba, 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 baba. You just gotta, they don't even want anything. Like you just look at them and like, and then they run away somewhere else and like, baba, baba, like just acknowledgement. That's all, you know. Or little girls get dressed up. Somebody has to say, "Oh my goodness, you look so nice." You know, that's it. Life has purpose now. You know, there's a need for acknowledgement, and of course, when we get older, you graduate from university. I mean, your friends are congratulating you. Your professors are saying, you know, good job and all of that. You're shaking hands with the dean or whatever. Yeah. But you're waiting for what dad's going to say. You're waiting for what mom's going to say. Then you're waiting for what your older sister's going to say, who never says anything nice. You know? There's some people, you need validation from them, right? You need something from them. The gifts aren't enough. The party's not enough. You need that validation. There's acknowledgement. And Allah gives us that acknowledgement from Himself in Jannah. And that's part of the ihsan of Allah in Jannah. Hal jaza'ul ihsani illa al-ihsan. This is one of those ayat that drives a person to get the very best from Allah by giving their very best. Right? And it actually, in the rahmah of Allah, when He's made this offer, in the middle of two Jannahs, like we took a view of a pair of Jannah, and we're about to take a view of another pair of Jannah, and in the middle of it, He placed this statement. Right? As if greater than that Jannah and even this Jannah is just the ihsan that I'm going to give you. Hal jaza'ul ihsani. Of course, others have looked at this ayah and said, look, all the things that were described, aren't they amazing? Isn't that what you deserve? But I would argue that's just the starting point of this ayah. There's way more being offered in this ayah. There's a world being offered to us in this ayah in just these words. Hal jaza'ul ihsani illa al-ihsan. Now, which brings me to another amazing thing. لِلَّذِينَ أَحْسَنُوا الْحُسْنَى وَزِيَادَةً. Allah. He says, the ones who do ihsan, they will have the very best, the most beautiful. They'll have that. Now, al-husna, that's the most beautiful, that by Allah's standard. What does that even mean? I can understand what's the most beautiful thing from my imagination. I have a standard, I have expectations, I have desires. I can come up with things that I want, but Allah is not saying, if you do the best, I will give you the best based on your imagination. He's saying, I'll give you the actual best, which is way above and beyond what I could have imagined. But even that's not enough. And He said, and I've got some more on top of that. وَزِيَادَةً. And what even is that ziyada? Like He doesn't even say. As if human imagination, human language, human knowledge isn't enough to grasp what that is. All they can be told is there's something even more. That's all they can be told. And what that is, that's with Allah. That's with Allah. In fact, some of the most remarkable rewards in the Quran are the ones that are unstated. They're unstated. Like these are some of my favorite expressions of Allah's rahmah in the Quran and Allah's generosity in the Quran. When He says, for example, فَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Right? If He says gardens, rivers, fruits, that's tangible. I can imagine something at least. But when He says, I'll take care of you. When He just says, it's on me. Whoa, what? You didn't spell it out. That means it's beyond what can be spelled out. It's beyond that, right? And those are much more powerful phrases in the Quran. Anyway, so now al-ihsan from Allah isn't spelled out, which suggests even the rewards mentioned in this entire surah aren't a complete coverage of Allah's ihsan. Right? And that's Imam Razi's view, and I think that makes a lot of sense in this ayah. Okay. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ this statement takes a new flavor now. Now it's as if people that were denying the Quran and denying the Prophet ﷺ and doing all this other takdeeb, now what they're being told is, look at what you're missing out on, fools. You can have this. Why are you choosing any other way when this is on the table? And with all of its evidences. Not only is this the truth, it's the most beautiful thing you can have in your life. So it's not just, Islam isn't just a philosophical debate against falsehood. Islam is a call to something beautiful. It beautifies life inside and out. And it's now, what a tragedy. Not only are you not accepting the truth, you're choosing ugliness. You're missing out on all of it, you know? And so, وَمِن دُونِهِمَا جَنَّتَانِ. Now, I'm going to share with you just some really interesting things about the second pair of Jannah. Sheikh Suhaib and I have certain psychedelic ideas. I'm going to share those ideas with you too. So, in the Arabic language, the pair, two, can be used for lots and lots and lots and lots. I mentioned that yesterday. I'm reminding you of it. Okay? So, if, for example, we say in Arabic, labbaik, sa'daik, those are twos, but it means many. Okay? Similarly, Allah says, ثُمَّ ارْجِعِ الْبَصَرَ كَرَّتَيْنِ. Karrataini means over, and that doesn't mean twice. Look at the sky twice. He's basically saying, look at the sky over and over and over again. So based on that spirit, if you read Jannatan as gardens on top of gardens on top of gardens on top of gardens, it's not far-fetched. That the two isn't actually just referring to two, it's many, 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 and many. That's what's being talked about here. Okay? But when you get to وَمِن دُونِهِمَا جَنَّتَانِ, so besides those two, there are even two other gardens. So now, if you go by the literal number, there were two, and there's two others. So what does that mean? Altogether, how many? There's four. But, here's the other thing. You can read مِن دُونِهِمَا as, and besides each one of those, there are two others. As if, now, stay with me, there was one Jannah, you walked in, as you went deep enough, you realized there is additional two more, and then you went into one of the other two more, and you went deep enough, and there were another two more, and then another two, and they keep splitting into new, two new, two new. There's an endless multiplication of Jannahs that is captured. So even though we're getting the first split, it's actually the beginning of an endless series of splits. So we're just in a new place, new adventures, endlessly, constantly. That's what Jannat are offering. وَمِن دُونِهِمَا جَنَّتَانِ. SubhanAllah. It's absolutely incredible. Then the other thing here is, are these next level of Jannahs better or worse? Right? Are they lesser? Is the first one described greater, or the second set described greater? Most scholarly literature on this, with some Ibn Atiyah, some other exceptions, most people say that the two that we read about are greater, and the two that we're about to read are lesser. And they give their reasons. Okay? Instead of giving you the list of their reasons, I'm going to give you when we get to each item, I'll compare and say why they say that the first one was better. And I'm also going to be transparent with you. I do not believe that the first two are better. I believe that actually the adventure is getting more intense in the next two. And that's a way of Allah saying, every time you walk into the next split, the adventure intensifies. And then you walk into the next split, and the adventure intensifies again. So I'm going to share with you what's been said, and why and Sheikh Suhaib and a few scholars in our history, they respectfully disagree, and why they hold the view that the next two Jannat are, more grand. Now, this is not one of those things where if you believe this or that your aqidah is messed up and you don't belong in Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and we need to correct you, and yeah, akhi, look, no, it's okay. You can have your opinion. It's okay. You can, you know what? Let's just get into any one of them. We'll be fine. So let's not, fight over which ones are better. And you don't have to win me over to your camp. I don't have to bring you over to but at least I'll share with you what I think makes sense from my perspective. And then, inshallah, as you grow in your own studies and learning, you'll come to your own conclusions. So the first argument that's made, why the next ones are lesser, is because the word dun is used. وَمِن دُونِهِمَا. Dun can mean below. Duna can mean lower or below. So it's the opposite of fawqa, right? So that would mean that the next two Jannat are lower. And if they're lower, that must mean they are lesser. So that's one of the reasons they say that they're lesser. But actually, dun can also mean something completely different. It could actually mean closer. Closer to them are these two other ones. So it doesn't just mean lower, it also means nearer. So, and it also means besides. It also means besides, without any implication of lesser or greater. So, وَمِن دُونِهِمَا can have that meaning. Okay. So, Allah says, وَقَوْلُهُ تَعَالَى لَهُمْ غُرَفٌ مِّن فَوْقِهَا غُرَفٌ. Allah says they all have mansions or lofts, and above them other lofts, and above them, beyond them other lofts, and beyond them other lofts. The kind of the idea that I was giving you. Notice غُرَفٌ twice. And what can twice mean? Endlessly. It could be endlessly, right? So who are these Jannat for? We already discussed this part. How many more heavens are you going to undermine? This is if Allah is asking this question. When He says, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Like, I mean, it's not just one Jannah you're giving up by taking your stupid path of takdeeb. There are so many Jannahs you're denying. So many blessings you're denying. And depriving yourself of. Now we walk into this Jannah. Can you remind me when you walked into the previous Jannat? What was the first description? Does anybody remember? Yeah, Dhawata Afnan. They're large branches. So you're seeing large branches, and that means you can see the leaves on those branches, and you can see fruits on those branches, etc. We're going to see a different description. We see mudhammatan. Al-aswad yakunu fil khayl wal ibil. Very dark colored horses, charcoal gray or black horses or camels are called mudham. Similarly, hadiqatun dahma or mudhamma, a garden that is so dark green or so green that the darker and the more full a color gets, the Arabs actually consider that closer to black. Culturally, they consider that. They say it's so dark, it's so full, the color is so rich that it's like it's black. That's why actually even a town in Iraq is called Sawad. A town in Iraq is called Sawad because it was known for having a lot of greenery. Right? So they're calling it black, but actually it's because it's very green. So the fullness of color is actually mudham. So the rich in color. Now, branches are brown. Branches are not green. Right? There's greenery on them. But the moment you walk into this one, you're not noticing the branches anymore. What are you noticing? The greenery, the lushness, as if the branches themselves have become invisible. There's so much more lushness and greenery here. Also, so I would argue this is a stronger description to start with. Things got a lot more intense. Like you were fascinated by the branches last time. Now you're fascinated by the greenery, the color, the texture this time. Also, the fact that the word mudham is a very strong word. And it's actually an ism maf'ul. What that means is they are green to which green keeps getting added. Like every time you look back, it looks more lush. And the color keeps getting deeper and richer and richer. I don't know if you ever tried this exercise before, but if you're just lying at a beach one day and staring into the sky keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper, right? And there are sometimes these 3D images, and you stare at them, and you're going inside them, and you're having this experience, right? I don't do these things, okay? But anyway, but the idea is you're looking at this garden, and the color is just pulling you in. And it keeps getting richer and richer and richer. The eyes are just drawn more and more to it. Interestingly, there are studies on higher rates of depression in places that don't have a lot of green, right? And so actually greenery has an impact on mood, on health, and is actually part of our lived experience. And also really interesting that the color spectrum, the middle color is actually green. Like this, the Jannah is there's an emphasis in Jannah on greenery. And you'll see this in the beginning, and you'll see this at the end of this description too, right? And this deen is the deen of the middle. And the middle color in the spectrum is actually green. It was also interesting that there's, you have to mix two colors to get green. You get yellow and blue mixed together, and they become green. And yellow represents the sun, or light, or heat, and blue represents, the earth, most of which is ocean, right? And so the heaven and the earth combined would give you green, right? And human beings are the best of the heavens and the earth, right? We have a spiritual core inside us, and we're earthly creatures, right? So the best of the spiritual, and Jannah is a spiritual place, but it has earthly things in it, doesn't it? Right? So subhanAllah, the choice of this word, this color, and the impact of this color on even human psychology and and mental health, well-being. People are asked to even, there's therapy that used to happen in different societies of people even told to walk on grass and stare at grass, right? When I left the East Coast in 1375, and I moved to Texas, I really like Texas for a lot of things. One of the things that's very depressing about Texas is you don't get a lot of green. It's just the sky is really big in Texas, but you don't have a lot of green, So just you'll miss even being stuck in traffic in the East Coast because there's trees on both sides, right? You're not going to see that when you go there. Anyway, so فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Now, okay, so do you remember the next description in the last Jannah? Rivers. فِيهِمَا عَيْنَانِ تَجْرِيَانِ. Like there's two rivers flowing, which can mean multiple waterfalls flowing. What we get here is فِيهِمَا عَيْنَانِ, same thing, two waterfalls. But this time, نَضَّاخَتَانِ. نَضَّاخَتَانِ. And something I didn't tell you, you're walking through the branches. If you're walking like in the fall, when you see the branches, you don't see the leaves, you see the branches. Can you see through the trees? Yeah, because there's no leaves. But when the trees are full, can you see through them? No, the leaves block your view, right? Especially if they're very lush. So previously, you're walking through the branches, maybe you can see there's a clearing up ahead. When you're walking through Mudhammatan, you cannot see what's coming ahead. So it's more of a mystery of what's coming. And when you finally got there last time, you saw that there's lots of waterfalls that are flowing. And the verb tajriyan was used. But now you arrive and you see aynan, and their description is naddakhatan. Naddakhatan. First of all, ayn is actually obviously water spring. But naddakhatan, fawaranul ma, is extreme gushing of water. Indifa'uhu kharijan biquwa, when something gushes out really like Niagara Falls kind of thing. Like it's really pumping out. It's not just flowing. You can end up at a creek, and that could be ayn tajri. That could be a creek. But ayn nadakha is like it's just coming out. And so you're at this magnificent waterfall that's coming. وَكَانَ مِن سُفُلْ إِلَى عُلُو فَهُوَ نَضْخ. And it's falling so hard, the water is slamming so hard, that actually the mist from the water is going from bottom to up. The water is rising, like the mist and the droplets of water are now coming into the air, right? That's the scene that you walk into. Is this more or less intense? This is far more intense. Similarly, actually in the Arabic language you have nadh, not nadh. And that's actually just the mist in the air that comes from water splashing. But if there's a lot of mist in the air and it's a very intense waterfall, then the ha becomes a kha, and that becomes nadh, actually. So it's the stronger of the two that's being described in this ayah. And then on top of that, naddakhatan. This is why Arabic study is so important. It's not just nadh we're dealing with, it's the ism mubalagha. It's fa'al. Naddakh. So when you say khabbaz, it's someone who makes, khubzes, right? Bread. So one who makes bread over and over again becomes a khabbaz. A qissa is a story. Someone who tells stories over and over again becomes a qassas. And a qass is also cutting. So the guy who cuts the meat over and over again also becomes a qassas, a butcher, right? So a khayt is a thread, and khayyat is a tailor, because they use the thing over and over again, right? So Allah is the giver of gifts. He gives gifts over and over again, so He's Wahhab. Allah forgives over and over again, so He's Ghaffar, right? Ghaffar. So when you have words that spell like that, Ghaffar, Khayyat, Qassas, Fa'al, that's someone who does something over and over again. This waterfall is Naddaha. It keeps giving these springs, the spring keeps coming out over and over and over again, compounding on each other, right? And there's lots of them all over the place, and you're just in awe of what you're seeing. This is far more intense than the last image. Also, this is a noun, naddakhatan, and tajriyan was a verb. And in Arabic rhetoric, the ism is stronger than the fi'l, right? So this is another linguistic reason why this is stronger. So would you rather the scorching water than the soothing mist jumping out of Jannah springs? فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Come on. On the one hand, imagine the water that was being described in Jahannam. We already read about that. And on the flip side is this. On the flip side is this. And you're still being this stupid, So that the question now takes another tone. Come on. Come to Allah's rahmah. It's an invitation to Allah's rahmah. فِيهِمَا فَاكِهَةٌ. In them both there are fruits. Do you remember the discussion of fruits? Okay. So last time it was min kulli fakihatin zawjan. From every kind of fruit there will be two. The folks that argue that Jannah is better actually use this one as their main arguments. Look, Allah said all kinds of fruits and they'll have two of each. Right? Here He doesn't say all kinds of fruits and two of each. He simply says what? Fakihatun. Fruits. The difference though is when you say fakihatun, then you're actually using the ism jins. The ism jins means all fruit of all kinds. Actually. So if you don't say min kulli fakiha, and you don't say zawjan, you just say fakiha, you actually incorporated everything that's been said before, and you added a next level of diversity. Fruit of all kinds. Okay? Fakihatun. The other interesting thing here is وَنَخْلٌ وَرُمَّانٌ. Palm trees, date palms, and pomegranate. So Allah added two specific fruits after that, right? Now, this is where Allah has taken something very specific to the Arabian region. Like to them, palm trees, of course, date palms are a necessity and also an exotic thing. And of course, pomegranate is like really luxurious, elite fruit. In fact, even now in the grocery store, pomegranate is more expensive than any other fruit. And pomegranate juice is more expensive than any other juice, even now. It has more health benefits than any other juice, right? So it's now we know even its benefits and acknowledge them and recognize them. But what's cool here is Allah didn't say an-nakhl war-rumman. In the Arabic language, when you refer to known fruits, then you put al on them. But here there's a nakira. There's a tanween on both of them. Nakhlun wa rummanun. You know what that means? Some kind of date palms you ain't never seen before. And some kind of pomegranate that you don't know what that is. Some new kind. But still it has to be acknowledged that this is very specific to the Arab taste. This, I believe, is because Allah has given a special ode, a special acknowledgement to the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, the first of the Muslims. We're sitting here learning the Quran because of those people. Those people got beat up, those people got tortured, those people stuck by the Prophet ﷺ, those people starved, those people went homeless, those people went to war, those people lost their loved ones, so we could say La ilaha illallah one day. And what the Quran does, when it gives us a view of the elite Jannah, it gives us a taste of things that those Arabs of that time, the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ, they would have been like, wow, there's going to be palm trees? There's going to be pomegranate? In 2023, someone's like, is there chocolate? Is there chocolate? And what kind? Is it dark or is it like, I just want to know, is there ice cream? Is there any mention of ice cream in Jannah? That would be to our taste, do you understand? But Allah is not speaking to our taste. He's speaking to their taste. I would argue He's speaking to their taste because they are as-sabiqun. They are the first and the foremost. So Allah gave them this special. That's why there's no biryani in the Quran. There's no, chicken masala, tikka, whatever. No, there's none of that stuff. You're not going to find that here. But you will find things that are very particular to the Arab taste. Now the Orientalist, right, the Westerner that's studying Islam from the outside, they study Islam like somebody studies a corpse, right, without a soul. So they're like, these, the primitive Arabs, they preferred palm tree than pomegranate, and therefore the Quran speaks in their terms. How primitive. I'm like, yeah. Go buy your $19 pomegranate juice from Whole Foods, and then tell me how primitive that is. And then pay extra for your vacation. The most expensive vacation spots you go to have palm trees on them. How primitive. So... And when he says, there's waterfalls in them and there's water springs in them, the most expensive buildings, the most expensive, headquarters and exotic cities, what do they'll put? They'll put water fountains, they'll put water features, they'll have rooftop waterfalls, all this stuff, man. The most expensive real estate on earth is waterfront. And if you get real estate that overlooks a waterfall, forget it. Forget it. You know, it could be in the middle of nowhere. You're going to pay an arm and a leg just because you have the view of the water, right? There is actually a science in places like Florida, California, etc. If you're home, you can see from the side of the window if you can see the water, then the price is different. But if you could have a direct view, the price is totally different. Hotels, they'll say, do you want sea view or do you want garage view, right? And garage view, they'll charge you $800 less. And sea view, the hotel room is still the same hotel room. The only difference is what? You get to see the water. That's all. Just that. And the price completely changes. So Allah is not speaking to some primitive Arabs that had these, please. Allah spoke to humanity in a way that we know that 200 years from now, 500 years from now, people are still going to desire the things Allah put inside of our nature to desire. So فِيهِمَا فَاكِهَةٌ وَنَخْلٌ وَرُمَّانٌ. I would argue, again, this is an upgrade. This is actually an upgrade. And then فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Now we get to the spouses. And it's interesting, this time, this is also really cool. The last time Allah mentioned seating first. Do you remember the pillow and the auntie, the whole story, right? Right, so the khaltu. So that was first, and then there was the beautiful spouse. You remember? This time, Allah will mention the beautiful spouse first, and then end with the seating. So it's this part has been reversed. Everything else was going in the same order, but this has been reversed. And the thing that's mentioned last is the thing that's the climax. So the climax in the previous heaven was what? The spouse. And the climax in this heaven seems to be what? No, the seating. The seating, relaxing. This also, I think, is a profound thing. There are people who fought their desires, right? And for them, the ultimate climax of heaven is that they no longer have to fight their desires. Then there are people who just worked and worked and worked and worked. They just wanted to do ihsan. Their focus wasn't fighting their desires or getting away from the haram. Their focus was, Ya Allah, life is short. I gotta do more before I die. I just need to push myself and They exhausted themselves. Like Allah says about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانصَبْ. When you're finally done, then relax. Then exhaust yourself in remembering Allah. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam cannot relax. He's continuously pushing himself. The Sahaba aren't relaxing. They're continuously pushing themselves. When someone's exhausting and pushing themselves, what's the ultimate reward for them? Now the rewards of what I've done. In a very dunya sense, very dunya sense, there are people who develop the right kind of business mentality. They even put that business mentality into their kids. Listen, you could spend your youth having a good time and then work your butt off in your 30s and your 40s, and eventually you might have enough savings to live a decent life by the time you get to your 50s and 60s. Or you can decide to just put your head down and get right to work even when you're 14, 15, 16 years old, and you'll be done by the time you're 25 and you can relax and have a good life. You have a choice. You want to be stupid until you're 30? It's up to you, right? And there are people who actually retire by the time they're 27. They do. But how do they retire by the time they're 27? You look at them working 100 hours a week, even when they're 15 years old. They get this mentality in them, I'm going to retire early, right? Well, that's just in the dunya sense. There are people like that. But imagine in the akhirah sense. I'm just going to put my work in because I want that permanent retirement, that permanent relaxation. What Allah has not mentioned here that He's already alluded to in the previous surah, in Surah Al-Qamar, which is why there's a connection between this climax and the last surah's climax. In the last surah's climax, not only are they sitting and relaxing, they're sitting next to Allah. Actually. فِي مَقْعَدِ صِدْقٍ عِنْدَ مَلِيكٍ مُقْتَدِرٍ. They're sitting next to Allah. In this world, they're trying to make Allah happy, trying to make Allah happy, trying to make Allah proud, trying to make Allah proud. And then they get to sit next to Allah. Right? So that's why that's the climax now at the end. So I would argue even that is an upgrade. So there are two companies, right? There's the company of spouse and there's the company of God himself, right? So as wonderful as the company of the spouse is, there's an upgrade. And that's the company of the one who loves like no one else can love, who appreciates like no one else can appreciate. And that's the company of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So that's going to come at the end. But anyway, even as describing the heavenly spouse now, do you remember the description of the heavenly spouse in the last... Qasiratul Tarf. There were two things about Qasiratul Tarf. They keep their eyes limited to you, and you also keep your eyes limited to them. You're obsessed with each other. Remember that conversation? Okay. Now Allah is going to give a very different description of these spouses of Jannah. He says, فِيهِنَّ خَيْرَاتٌ حِسَانٌ. In those gardens, now hinna is plural, it's not hima, it's hinna. It's already giving us a hint that this is not just two gardens, these are multiple gardens. Because if it was just two gardens, it would be hima. Some said, oh, this is referring to all four from before. But I would argue this is actually even going beyond that. Okay? This is just the gardens upon the gardens upon the gardens. We'll have khayratun hisan. Now khayrat means from khayr actually became khayr. It actually refers to the inner goodness of something. The inner goodness of something. And hisan refers to the beauty of something. So to put it very simply, khayrat refers to all the qualities that make someone good on the inside. And hisan refers to all the qualities that perhaps make someone good on the outside. So inside and outside. So like, I mean, it's politically incorrect to describe this way, but there are people that, alhamdulillah, they're very good, men and women that are very good in this world, but they're not very good looking. And then there are people that are very beautiful, but they're not very good on the inside. Like they're beautiful on the outside, very ugly on the inside. They're mean, arrogant, self-centered, cruel, right? And perhaps it's their looks that makes them that way. They feel like they're superior to others. They feel like they have choices endlessly. They can do whatever they want. They can be with whoever they want. You don't like it, take a hike, I can just get somebody else. Look at me, etc., etc. That kind of mentality, right? So what happens with beauty sometimes, it's accompanied with ugly characteristics, right? And sometimes, and then the flip also, you might find someone who's really, really, they're not great looking, but they're just a wonderful person. They're brilliant, they're insightful, they're intelligent, and they're a wonderful person, right? And then of course you get the best of both worlds, like Yusuf alayhi salam kind of situation, right? You got like kind of the best of both worlds type situation. But the thing is that here you are, the believer, he wants to be with someone who's nice, but also nice looking, right? He wants both. But which one was given priority in the description? The inside qualities. The likability, the agreeableness. It's also interesting that khayrat then, what's good for me, what the qualities I like, may not be the qualities somebody else likes. Many of you young men aren't married yet. Many of you ladies aren't married yet. When you get married, before you get married, this person is the perfect person for me. Subhanallah, Allah makes the pairs. I so believe that. My iman has gone up so much ever since I got engaged, because I just know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the perfect pair. Right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, about that. And then you get married, and then, you get to live with the person, and you see beard clippings in the sink, and you see, the toilet seat not put down, or you see, or you see every time you come home, she's talking to her sister, and you're like, Assalamu alaikum. Hiya, I have this. And so happy on the phone. As soon as she hangs up, you were so happy a second ago on the phone. You were not in a bad mood. Why did you become the, So, subhanAllah, Allah really makes the pairs. So... So you might find them, and what happens is you might be really attracted to your fiance or your spouse. You're really attracted to them, but when some personality quirks or some parts of them that you didn't know about before, when those things come out, then it doesn't matter how beautiful they look, they stop looking that beautiful to you. You don't find them attractive anymore. Even though anybody else might say, you're so lucky, you're married to someone who's so good looking, who's so beautiful, etc., etc. You don't see it that way anymore because you don't first see the outside beauty anymore. What you first see is the inside ugliness, right? You just remember the hurtful words. You remember the dismissal. You remember the condescending looks. These are the things you remember, and so that outside beauty just becomes almost empty, right? It doesn't have any real meaning anymore, right? So actually what Allah does in Jannah is He describes khayratun. This is someone you actually want to talk to, someone you want to be with, someone who just, everything they do just makes you happy. They're catered to your designs. You were made a certain way, and Allah created someone who perfectly pairs to you. And then they're on top of that, they're beautiful. And actually that's what makes their beauty even more beautiful, is because they are catered to you in this way, right? So, فِيهِنَّ خَيْرَاتٌ حِسَانٌ is a profound gift of Allah in Jannah. And of course, that also teaches us that that in its pure form may not be possible in this world. You cannot have someone who everything about them is perfect or exactly the way you like it to be. And the thing is that in Jannah, Allah is creating things catered to our desires. But this life is not about catering other people to our desires. This is dunya. We don't own anybody in this dunya. And what happens sometimes is you just tell your spouse, a wife tells the husband, or the husband tells the wife, I want you to be more like this. I want you to be more like that. I want you to be more like that. And there's, at some level, that's healthy. But at some level, you start bending and twisting this other person and making them into someone they're not. You're trying to make them into someone else. And they start losing themselves. They start breaking. And then they start resenting you and disliking you, because they start feeling like, you don't like me for who I am. You keep trying to make me someone else. You just twist me into this other creature that I'm not, right? So this is actually one of the things that Allah will not have. We won't have to deal with that in Jannah. It's actually just the person, the way you want them to be, inside and out, and that forever, right? So فِيهِنَّ خَيْرَاتٌ حِسَانٌ. So al-khayrat annahunna fadilatun nafs kara'im al-akhlaq. Like I was saying, that khayrat means that they are great in their character, their manners, their demeanor. And fi batihinna al-khayr, like Imam Razi says, on the inside they have the best. And then on the outside is sifatul dhawad, husnul khuluq wal khalq, fi zahirinna al-husn. On the outside they have beauty, right? Hisan al-wujuh, al-Qurtubi says this is referring to their beautiful faces. And even faces, a face could be very beautiful, but when it looks at you in a mean way, it's not beautiful anymore, right? You know, man or woman. The face isn't just about beauty, the face is also about expression, isn't it? Then فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, an additional description. Now the last time we saw قَاصِرَاتُ الطَّرْفِ, and nobody's touched them before. That was the description. And then there was a parallel given. They are like pearls and rubies. Rubies and pearls. Yaqut wal marjan. That was the description that was given. Now we're not going to get a comparison. We're going to get a further description of them. And the description is also really interesting. The first word is hur. And I don't know why hur became like the term for the women of Jannah, or the creatures that were made in Jannah, that they're just called hur. Hur is not their name. It's just one more description. Just like khayrat is a description, and hisan is a description, and qasirat al-tarf is a description, hur is also a description. That's not the species called hur. Okay? So we just kind of term these things. We grabbed the word from the Quran, we made it common terminology, but that's actually not what it is. It's just a description of these women. So let's talk about what hur actually means. Jam'u hawra, it's the plural of the word hawra, and dhatul hawar, it means someone who possesses hawar. Now what does hawar mean? It actually means that you can notice that their eyes have very distinct color. And the white of their eyes has no redness in it. It's very distinctly white. And then the pupil is very distinctly black, or a very distinct color. And somebody even added shiddatu sawadi aswadiha, like really dark black eyes. But again, I think the word sawad is used in Arab culture for rich color. So it's not just for black. It's like we saw in Mudhammatan. So the hawra doesn't have to be someone whose eyes are black, but can be any color, but the color is very rich. Now, why is that important to mention? Because instead of mentioning any other part of them, why the stress on the eyes? Because remember qasiratut tarf, they're looking at you, you're looking at them. So you're lost in each other's eyes. You're making facial contact. And people that are in marriages know that facial contact is not always easy. Right? So a lot of times you're upset, you're avoiding what? Eye contact. Right? Or there's something on your mind and you don't want to tell her or you don't want to tell him, you're avoiding what? Eye contact. Because the moment you make eye contact, you say, what's going on? Nothing. Why aren't you looking at me? Look at me. Look at me. Because you know, once they look at you, they're like, okay, now I have to tell you everything. Because the eyes give it away. Right? So there's actually this, the word hur also describes this relationship in which you're constantly making eye contact. And that's also been beautified. Then there's maqsurat. Hurun maqsurat fil qiyam. And the word maqsurat, let's read through Alusi and Razi a little bit and get an insight into maqsurat fil qiyam. Imra'atun qasira wa maqsura ay mukhaddara mulazima li baytiha la tatufu fi turuq, meaning that she's anticipating the husband coming into the home. She's holding herself back, preparing herself. It's like the wedding night every night kind of feel. That's what, you know, Allah is describing with this word. And by the way, where is she holding herself back in? Not in the home, but it says fil khiyam. You know what a khayma is, right? It's a tent. A khayma is a tent. We go back to the Arab sensibility. Like somebody living in, like, you know, New Zealand is like, what am I going to do with a tent? Why do I need a tent? Can we have like a mansion or a loft and what's with the tent? But if you go to the Khalij and you say, there's going to be a tent in Jannah, you're like, what? Yeah, now we're talking. Even now, they're like, some of them are multi-billionaires. And when they want to party, you know what they do? They go out in a tent. They go set up a tent. You know? Like there was, I was recently in Qatar. I was there for Islamic reasons during the World Cup, okay? But anyway, I got invited to a dinner, you know, and so I was like, okay, let's, you know, so one of the shuyukh invited a bunch of us. Imam Siraj was there, and well, they take us out into the desert. Like where are we going? Are you taking us somewhere where some shady stuff is going down? Like, why are we going in the middle of nowhere? I go out there and they've got the whole, you know, tent set up and, you know, of course a football field and all of it. And because that's their thing, that's their deal. You know, I was invited one time to a family gathering in Saudi, in Jeddah. I was making Umrah, finished Umrah. I try to hide when I'm doing Umrah, right? So somebody looks at me and goes, I was like, yep, Mufti Mank. And I keep going. So like... Right, so but some family recognized me like, oh my God, you're here. Okay, you know what? We're gonna take you to Medina and we want you to have dinner with us, etc., etc. We're families from here, etc. I was like, okay, all right, let's do this. So there's like we have this lunch in our tent. I was like, it's pretty hot outside. He goes, don't worry about it. Just we have lunch in our tent. They take me to their home. Their home is like the size of this masjid, maybe. And in the backyard, they have this giant yard, which they turned into this marquee tent, like a catering hall, but it's a tent. It was got like AC units running inside and chandeliers and all of it. And this is their family lunch, you know, in a tent. So if these are the tents in dunya, then I don't know what kind of tent setup is going on in Jannah. I'm pretty sure it's not like the one you buy from like a camping store and you go and you, you know, well, finally made it to Jannah. like that's not. So there's a beauty to these tents. But anyway, more about maqsurat. وأخرج ابن أبي شيبة غيره قال مقصورات قلوبهن وأبصارهن ونفوسهن على أزواجهن الله. He said they are restricted. It says restricted in tense. So that sounds like they're under house arrest, right? But actually he says no, maqsurat is a standalone by itself. Their hearts, their eyes, their persons have restricted themselves to pleasing their spouses. Like they've given their heart to their spouse, their selves to their spouse, their eyes to their spouse. وَيُحْتَمَلُ كَوْنُهُ صِفَةً لِحُورٍ فَلَا تَغْفَلْ. Meaning their eyes are restricted again, because hur refers to the eyes, right? So it's similar to قَاصِرَاتُ الطَّرْفِ again. It's another expression for قَاصِرَاتُ الطَّرْفِ. Okay? But this time the eyes are wide open. وقوله مقصورات في الخيام إشارة إلى معنى في غاية اللطف وهو أن المؤمن في الجنة لا يحتاج إلى التحرك لشيء. Razi says this is a very subtle, beautiful gift that Allah has given, that a believer doesn't have to move around to get anything. Everything moves towards Him. فالمأكول والمشروب يصل إليه من غير حركة منه. The drink, the food, everything's just prepared waiting for Him. Everything's just there coming towards Him. And so this is حور مقصورات في الخيام. And of course then Allah Azza wa Jal gives us فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, and adds that same description again, لَمْ يَطْمِثْهُنَّ إِنسٌ قَبْلَهُمْ وَلَا جَانٌ. And I'll add one more comment here that I didn't last time. This ayah is twice now in both Jannahs about possessiveness. It's about possessiveness. No man has touched her before. No jinn has ever touched her before. This is emphasizing one concept, which is what? Possessiveness. And possessiveness was about the eyes, wasn't it? Because they're staring at each other. What does that tell you about the way that human beings were created and what they desire? They desire possessiveness. They want a relationship where they feel like they are the center and that their eyes aren't wandering. They're not going everywhere. And when that starts happening, if a wife starts feeling like her husband's eyes are not contained to him, or if the husband starts feeling that my wife's eyes are not contained to me, right? I see her staring at this or that or the other. Or I see nowadays people are watching movies together and she's commenting on how handsome the actor looks, right? Oh my God, he's so amazing. Oh my God, I love him. And she's sitting next to her husband. Oh my God, I love him. You know. And she's saying these things. What does that do to the husband? Even if he doesn't say it. You know what that does? It makes him lose interest in her over time. Like in the beginning, he's upset. But she says, no, it's not a big deal. Come on. Of course, we're human. Just because you're married doesn't mean you're not attracted to anybody else. But Allah has told us to guard our eyes as much as possible, right? And you have to contain that. But when you make that into a joke, and it's not a big deal, you know what happens? Then the one realizes she's not qasiratul tarf. She's not qasiratul tarf. Why would I be? Why would I be? And so he starts to lose interest in her. And when possessiveness goes, when that kind of possessiveness goes, then other things start going with it. This is the Quranic philosophy of relationships. You people give you a million different kinds of relationship advice, right? And nowadays everybody's a relationship expert, right? And they're like, oh, you can just be friends, or he's too possessive, or he's too jealous. If he's so insecure, then you don't need that kind of a man. You need a real man who's not going to be scared of blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff, right? This kind of narrative where everybody can, if you have a real trusting relationship, then you should be able to just let your spouse go and this or that or the other. Yeah, because for them, shaitan doesn't exist. For them, temptation doesn't exist. For them, all of these things cannot be acknowledged to them, right? Our Prophet will tell us, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a man and a woman should not be alone because the third one will be shaitan. And you tell that to somebody who's too woke now, they're like, oh, you're saying you can't trust me? You're so insecure. You're so perverted that you can't be alone? Excuse me. We're past that now. The world has moved on. Yeah. No, it hasn't. This is what we like to tell ourselves, that we've somehow graduated from our temptations, or we've gone beyond the waswas of shaitan because we're too evolved morally. Yeah, can you see the world around you as morally evolved? If anything, it's devolved, right? But the language sounds like as if we are above and beyond these lowly expectations, or we're being put down. It's beneath us to have these standards. And when you have when you develop this kind of self-righteous arrogance, when it comes to our own weakness and our vulnerability, we end up destroying our own relationships. We destroy our own families, because we're blind to the truth, some very fundamental truths that Allah has given us, and this is one of them. That we do want someone who's they're qasiratul tarf, and that's the ultimate reward in Jannah. It's been mentioned twice. Why would this be mentioned? You wouldn't think In Jannah, why does somebody have to worry about possessiveness? Who's going to mess with you, man? There's no shaitan. Nobody's going to look at her. People got their own woman to look at, their own wife to look at. But in the core of our being, when it comes to this relationship, there is always going to be a desire to want to have exclusive, possession. And that's not about control. That's actually a form of love. And it shouldn't translate into, some people just turn this into a control, right? I don't want you doing the groceries. I don't want you to, why are you looking outside the window? Don't look outside the window. Look that way. Go over there. Like, that's not possessiveness. That's psychotic control, and that's not what I'm talking about. So, just because there's one extreme of, let's everybody be free, that doesn't mean that the other extreme, let's put them in a cage, that's an extreme too. But there is a middle path that Allah has given us, and we have to observe that. And if we don't observe that, the damage will be on ourselves. So I'm going to give you guys your first prolonged break, inshallah, and then we're going to wrap up our discussion of this surah and talk about the structure of this surah also. Barakallahu li wa lakum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.